Hello and welcome to Bob's Programming Academy. In this tutorial, we will teach you how to build a landing page using Bootstrap 5 and Sass. A landing page is a web page designed to grab a visitor's attention, present them with a specific product or service, and then encourage them to take a desired action, such as signing up for a service, buying a product, or downloading a document. A crucial element to every landing page is a call to action button navigating towards a particular activity. This is the project we are going to build. At the very top, we have a header with a logo, a menu, and social media icons. Below the header, we have a hero section with an image, a short description, and two buttons. Next, we have a product section. This section is split into two parts. On the left, we have a section in which we encourage visitors to subscribe to our services. This section includes a title, a short description, and a button. On the right, we have four products. Each product includes a product name, a description, and an icon. Next, we have a call to action. In this section, we encourage visitors to sign up for our newsletter. Finally, at the bottom of the page, we have a footer. This website is fully responsive and it looks great on devices of all sizes. This is what the project looks like on an iPhone 12 Pro. This is an iPad mini. This is what the project looks like on a Nest Hub Max. We are going to build this landing page using Bootstrap 5 and Sass. Bootstrap is a free and open source front-end framework for faster and easier web development, and it's a great choice when we want to quickly build responsive and mobile-friendly web applications. Bootstrap includes HTML and CSS-based design templates for a grid system, spacing, typography, and various components such as buttons, forms, tables, navigation, alerts, and so on. Bootstrap also includes JavaScript plugins that allow us to easily add to our websites modals, popovers, tooltips, off-canvas menus, toggle-able hidden elements, and more. JavaScript in Bootstrap is HTML first, which means that we can use JavaScript just by adding data attributes to our HTML elements, since nearly all of Bootstrap's JavaScript plugins include a data API. Bootstrap is very popular and many different websites use it. When we use Bootstrap with a precompiled style sheet, it has all the default colors, typography, spacing, and more that people associate with Bootstrap. If you are familiar with Bootstrap, you can probably recognize the distinctive Bootstrap look on so many websites all over the internet. When you use these styles for your own projects, they will look like Bootstrap unless you change the styles. This might be fine if you create a personal website or a hobby project. However, if you have specific brand guidelines that your customers or users recognize you by, you will likely need to change these styles to match the style of your brand. Since Bootstrap is so popular and widespread across the internet, some people might recognize the default Bootstrap styles, which might negatively impact user experience. So for professional use cases, it is highly recommended to customize the default Bootstrap styles. Sometimes even for your personal projects, you might want to use Bootstrap for all its benefits and at the same time customize your web applications and apply your own design ideas so that your projects have a unique look. Bootstrap 5 can be easily customized in many ways. We can customize typography, colors, spacing, sizing, border radius, box shadow, and more across all components, as well as customize all the different components individually. We can also customize the helpers and utilities. The most important elements you should customize when building a web application are the color palette and typography, so that they will match that of your brand. The other aspects of the user interface can then be further customized to match your current brand guidelines or to differentiate your work from all the websites that use the default Bootstrap styles. Usually, we want to customize the Bootstrap styles, but it is worth mentioning that we can also customize the behavior of the JavaScript-enabled components in Bootstrap. While this is not that important for the perception of your brand, it might be something to consider changing as well. There are multiple ways to customize Bootstrap. The choice of approach depends on your project, the version of Bootstrap you're using, browser support, the complexity of your build tools, and more. Let's take a look at 4 ways to customize Bootstrap 5. The first method is to add the compiled Bootstrap CSS directly to achieve the styles you want. This can be rather complex, depending on what you want to change, but most importantly, it will make it hard to update Bootstrap, since you will need to make all the changes again if you want to update to a newer version of Bootstrap. I don't recommend this approach. The second method is to override the Bootstrap CSS with your own custom styles. In this approach, you create your own additional style sheet that can override the Bootstrap default styles for different components and then link that style sheet after the Bootstrap one in your HTML file. I am not a fan of this method either. For small tweaks, this might be okay, but for larger projects, this can be time-consuming, and there may be a lot of redundant style declarations. This method would also increase the size of the total CSS code. Finally, it might take a lot of work if you want to change many aspects of the Bootstrap default styles. The third method is to customize Bootstrap via CSS variables. You can use CSS variables to override global theme styles, individual components, or even utility class variables. Bootstrap provides several CSS variables that allow easy access to commonly used values like theme colors, breakpoints, and primary font stacks. CSS variables use the syntax var and in the parentheses --ps variable name and can be inherited by children elements. This approach is much better than the previous two. The fourth way to customize Bootstrap, and the method we will show you in this tutorial, is to use Sass. Sass, or Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets, is a preprocessor scripting language that is compiled into CSS. Sass is very powerful and it's a great way to customize Bootstrap, since Sass allows us to use variables, nested rules, mixins, functions, and more, all with a fully CSS-compatible syntax. There are many benefits of using Sass to customize the Bootstrap default styles. Using Sass, we can modify global settings, typography, and a color palette, and easily customize Bootstrap components from only one place. Sass is also a lot easier and quicker to work with, and on top of that, the compiled file size can be optimized to reflect the actual elements and features being used. In addition, Sass helps keep large style sheets well organized and makes it easy to share designs within and across projects. For these reasons, using Sass to customize Bootstrap 5 is the recommended approach. This is also the approach we will show you in this tutorial. If you want maximum control and possibilities, you should customize Bootstrap using Sass. This requires a Sass compiler, some knowledge of the Sass language, and knowledge of the Bootstrap Sass files. We will discuss all of these topics in this video. Sass is an abbreviation of Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. It is a special kind of style sheet language known as a preprocessor scripting language that extends the default capabilities of CSS. This enables you to use JavaScript-like logic and features in the code, such as variables, nesting, mixins, inheritance, partials, functions, mathematical operations, and more. All of this helps us write more robust and maintainable code by automating repetitive tasks, reducing the number of errors, creating reusable code snippets, and more. Sass has a syntax similar to CSS, but the Sass files must be compiled to regular CSS before they can be rendered in browsers. This can be done using the live Sass compiler. Sass supports two different syntaxes, the original intended Sass syntax and the SCSS syntax, which is basically a superset of regular CSS. The SCSS syntax is the most popular one, easier for beginners, and the one used for the Bootstrap styles. Therefore, we will use the SCSS syntax in this tutorial. However, remember that both of these different syntaxes support the same Sass features. So, without further ado, let's get started. To be able to customize Bootstrap using Sass, we need to install Bootstrap locally into our project using npm, the Node package manager. To use npm, you need Node.js installed on your computer. To download and install Node.js, go to https://nodejs.org. If you are using Mac like me, you can also install Node.js using the Homebrew package manager. This is my preferred way of installing software on Mac. To confirm that Node.js was installed correctly, open a new terminal window and run the command node-version. In my case, the result is 19.1.0. You will also need a code editor. My favorite is Visual Studio Code, which is free and easy to install and has important features such as support for IntelliSense code completion, debugging, and code refactoring. I will be using Visual Studio Code in this tutorial. To download and install Visual Studio Code, go to https://code.visualstudio.com. From within Visual Studio Code, we can also install various extensions that can speed up our work and improve our productivity. In this tutorial, we will use two Visual Studio Code extensions, Live Sass Compiler and Live Server. Live Sass Compiler allows us to compile Sass files to CSS files in real time. It will watch a Sass file for changes, and then it will automatically compile that Sass file into a CSS file whenever a change is made and saved. We will also be using the Live Server extension to launch a local development server that allows for a live reload of our project. To install the Live Sass compiler in Visual Studio Code, go to Extensions and in the search field type Live Sass compiler. It's this one here. Press the Install button. Next, in the search field type Live Server. Press the Install button. Next, restart Visual Studio Code for the changes to take effect. Now we need to configure the Live Sass compiler and specify where the CSS will be output. In Visual Studio Code, navigate to the menu on the top, click Code, then select Preferences and then Settings. In the search field, type Live Sass Formats. Then click this link right here, Edit in Settings.json. I want the Live Sass compiler to output a compressed CSS file into the CSS folder located in the project's main directory. The file extension will be .css. To follow along with this tutorial, make sure that you have the same settings as me. Now let's create a directory where we will keep our code. In Visual Studio Code, go to Explorer and click Open Folder. Next, navigate to the location where you want to create a new folder and click the New Folder button. Next, type the name of the project folder and click Create. I will call the project folder Landing Page. Once you've created the project directory, click Open. Next, in Visual Studio Code, navigate to the menu on the top, click Terminal and then select New Terminal. From the terminal, run the command npm init to create a package.json file. This file holds metadata relevant to the project, such as the name of the project, description, author, and license. The package.json file is also used for managing the project's dependencies, scripts, versions, and much more. Let's answer these questions about our project. I will accept the default values by pressing Enter after each option displayed in the terminal. OK, we now have the package.json file. This file will keep track of our project dependencies when we install them using npm. Now let's install Bootstrap. In the terminal, type npm install bootstrap and press Enter. This might take a few seconds. You may get an error message saying that running scripts is disabled when you try to run the npm install command on Windows. If you do, entering the following command into the terminal should solve the problem. set-execution policy space dash scope space process space dash execution policy space bypass. The npm install command is how you can download and install Node.js packages to your computer so you can run them or so that other programs can make use of them. When a program needs another program in order to run, we call the program it requires a dependency. When you run npm install followed by the name of a Node.js package, npm looks for that package in the npm registry, downloads it along with all of its dependencies, and installs it into the project. The npm registry is a database of JavaScript packages. Open source developers and developers at companies use the npm registry to contribute packages to the entire community or members of their organizations and download packages to use in their own projects. In the package.json file, we now have a new section called Dependencies with one dependency listed, Bootstrap. Dependencies are specified in a simple object that maps a package name to a version range. I also want to use icons in this application. There are many free icon sets and toolkits to choose from. In this tutorial, we will use material icons and Bootstrap icons. We can install material icons and Bootstrap icons the same way we've just installed Bootstrap. In the terminal, type npm install material-icons and press Enter. Next, in the terminal, type npm install bootstrap-icons and press Enter. In the package.json file, we now have three dependencies listed: Bootstrap, Bootstrap icons, and material icons. When npm finds a package in the npm registry, it downloads and installs that package into the project in a new, automatically generated folder called node_modules. The node_modules folder is located in the project's root directory. The node_modules folder is where all the actual package code is located. In other words, the node_modules folder is where we installed Node.js packages along with all of their own dependencies that the packages need to run. Right now, we have 4 packages in the node_modules folder: Bootstrap, Bootstrap icons, material icons, and Popper.js. Popper.js is a dependency of Bootstrap, and it is required for Bootstrap to run correctly. Therefore, Popper.js is downloaded and installed automatically when we install Bootstrap using the npm install command. In Bootstrap, popover components, such as tooltips and drop-down menus, rely on the Popper.js package for positioning. It is important to note that the node_modules folder is not meant to be committed to Git or even shared. This is why you should add node_modules to the git ignore file that tells which files Git should skip when tracking files. If you check our GitHub repositories for various projects shown on this channel, you will notice that we always add node_modules to the git ignore and never push the node_modules folder and its contents to GitHub. If we open the Bootstrap folder, we will find their dist, JS, and SCSS directories. The dist folder contains both compiled and minified variations of Bootstrap's CSS and JS files, which you can use directly in your project if you want to. This is an alternative to using Bootstrap CDN, and everything would still work the same way. The SCSS folder contains all the Bootstrap raw Sass files that declare Bootstrap variables such as colors, spacing, breakpoints, font sizes, and so on. They also contain classes for Bootstrap components such as alerts, buttons, cards, forms, navigation, tables, and more. If we open the variables file, we can see all the different variables and their values. These are the values that are being applied when we use Bootstrap as is. All these Sass files in the SCSS folder are compiled and minified into the final CSS we can see inside the dist folder. Okay, now let's create project files. We will need two files, one for our HTML code and one for Sass. The CSS file to link in the HTML file will be created automatically by the live Sass compiler. The live Sass compiler will watch our Sass file for changes, and then it will automatically compile that Sass file into a CSS file whenever a change is made and saved. Okay, let's create the files. In Visual Studio Code, press New File and add a file called index.html. Next, press New Folder and add a folder called Sass. Inside that folder, add a file called styles.scss. Let's also add a folder for images that we are going to use in our project. If you want to use the same images as we do in this tutorial, you can find them in the project's GitHub repository. The repository is linked in the description section below. Okay, we've just created all the files we will need for this project. First, we will focus on the index.html file. HTML or hypertext markup language is a language we use to describe the structure of a web page, that is, text, forms, buttons, and other parts of the web page that users ultimately see and interact with. An HTML page consists of text-based code we write that a web browser such as Chrome, Firefox, or Safari can look at, parse, understand, and display to the user. CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets, is a language we use to describe the style of a web page, that is, the colors, fonts, layouts, and spacing that make the web page look exactly the way we want it to look. Okay, let's start with a simple HTML5 structure. I will add the doc type and the HTML tag. In the head section, I will add two meta tags and a title of landing page. Inside the body, I will add a heading that says Hello World. An HTML page is structured as a series of nested HTML elements, where an HTML element describes something on the page, and we might have elements that are inside of other elements. Each of those elements is indicated by what we call an HTML tag, enclosed using angle brackets. The majority of elements in HTML have an opening and closing tag. A few, like the meta tag for example, are self-closing tags. We open our document with a doc type declaration. It's a way of telling the web browser what version of HTML we are using on this particular web page. Doc type HTML means that this page is written using HTML5, which at the time of making this tutorial is the latest version of HTML. After the doc type declaration, we open the HTML tag. It's the root tag for our document, which indicates the beginning of the HTML content of our page. In the HTML tag, we can also specify an HTML attribute that provides some additional information. Here, we use the lang attribute to specify the language for the document. In our case, it's English. Inside the HTML tag, we have a number of different elements that describe what we want on this page, starting with the head section of the page, which provides information about the page that will be useful for web browsers. In the head section, we first use a meta tag to specify the character encoding, which tells the web browser how to parse the information contained within our page. Unless we have a good reason to specify otherwise, the value of the char set will typically be UTF-8. The second meta tag is a viewport meta tag. It tells the web browser how to render our page and makes our page more mobile friendly. It says, make the content render at 100% of the width of all supported mobile browsers. Next, we have the title of our web page. The body of an HTML page is indicated by a body tag. The body of the page is its visible part, the part that users ultimately see and interact with. Inside the body tag, we have a heading that says Hello World. You can think of HTML headings as titles or subtitles that you want to display on a web page, like a headline that describes what the page is about. HTML headings are defined with the h1 to h6 tags. h1 defines the most important heading and h6 the least important. Okay, let's check what our page looks like now. We will use the live server extension that we've just installed to launch a local development server that will allow for a live reload of our page. To start the server, click Go Live here in the bottom right corner of the status bar in Visual Studio Code. This action will load our web page in your default web browser. The page now displays the text Hello World. If you are wondering, 127.0.0.1 is the IP address for localhost, which is your local computer. The 5500 after the colon is the listening port for our server, and after the slash we have index.html, which is our web page. In Visual Studio Code, in the bottom right corner of the status bar, instead of the text Go Live, we can now see port 5500. To stop the server, click on this text. You will see again the text Go Live, which indicates that the live server is not currently running. Now we can start working on the structure of our page. First, let's open the styles.scss file. Inside this file, we need to import all of the Bootstrap Sass files so that when the live Sass compiler compiles the styles.scss file and produces a CSS file, it will include all of the default Bootstrap Sass too. In Visual Studio Code, in the styles.scss file, type @import *********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************#. The bootstrap.scss file combines all of the other Bootstrap Sass files together. Therefore, we import them all just by importing this one file. Let's also import Bootstrap icons. In the styles.scss file, type @import ***********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************#. font bootstrap icons css semicolon. Finally, let's import material icons. In the styles.scss file, type import /node underscore modules material icons icon font material icons css semicolon. The import rule in Sass allows us to import Sass and CSS style sheets and provides access to mixins, functions, and variables. We can also use one import rule to combine multiple CSS style sheets together, rather than requiring each style sheet to have its own import rule. In that case, we just need to separate the style sheets using a comma. Now we need to compile the styles.scss file into a final CSS file that we can then use in our HTML page. To compile the styles.scss file, click Watch Sass here at the bottom in the status bar in Visual Studio Code. In the output window, we can see that the live Sass compiler has compiled the styles.scss file and generated two new files, styles.css and styles.css.map located in the CSS directory. The styles.css.map file is a CSS source map that allows the web browser to map CSS generated by Sass back to the original source file, including the information about which Sass variable, rule, mixin, or function is responsible for a given line in the generated CSS file. From now on, whenever we make a change in the styles.scss file and save it, the live Sass compiler will autocompile that file again and override the resulting CSS and CSS source map files so that they include the latest changes. Now, let's link the resulting CSS file in our HTML file so that our page can use the Bootstrap styles. We can include a CSS file in an HTML page by adding a link tag in the head section of the page. This link tag must contain a rel attribute that specifies a relationship reference to the style sheet. The second attribute we need to add is the href, which indicates a hyperlink reference and should point to the URL of our CSS file. What you can see here above the link tag is a comment. The comment tag in HTML is denoted by the left angle bracket, exclamation mark, dash dash, and dash dash right angle bracket. Anything that appears between the comment tag is ignored by the web browser. Comments can be added at any point within the head and body sections of an HTML page. Okay, let's check what our page looks like now. Start the live server again by pressing Go Live here in the bottom right corner of the status bar in Visual Studio Code. We can see that the font has changed. It's an indicator that the Bootstrap styles have been applied to our page. Let's keep the live server running. It will allow for a live reload of the page so that we can see the progress while we are building our website without refreshing the page in the browser. Now we can start defining the structure of our web page. I will remove this heading with the text Hello World as we won't need it. First, let's add a div tag with a class of container-fluid and px-0. The div tag is typically used as a container for other HTML elements. We want to style it with CSS, and that's why we are adding the class attribute. The class attribute is used to point to a class selector in the CSS file. Multiple HTML elements can share the same class, meaning that we can use one class name to style multiple HTML elements in the same way. As I've mentioned, Bootstrap 5 includes a set of predefined CSS classes that we can use to quickly and easily build responsive and mobile-friendly web applications. Here, our div tag will be styled in the way that is described in two Bootstrap classes, container-fluid and px-0. The container-fluid is a Bootstrap class that provides a full-width container that spans the entire width of the viewport. Think of the viewport as the visible area of a web page on a display device. The px-0 is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the padding on the x-axis to 0. This means that we set both the padding on the left and the right side of the div to 0. Next, inside that div, we will have a navbar, which is a navigation header. Below the navbar, we will have a hero section. Next, let's add a main tag. The main tag specifies the main content of a page. The content inside the main tag should be unique to the page. It should not include any content that is repeated across the pages, such as sidebars, navigation links, copyright information, or site logos. Inside the main tag, we will have a product section and a call to action section. Finally, below the div, we will have a footer. Okay, let's start with the navbar. Bootstrap's navbar is a responsive navigation header with support for branding, a navigation menu, and the collapsed JavaScript plugin. This plugin is used to show and hide content. First, I will add a div with the class of container. The container is a Bootstrap class that provides a fixed width container with a width determined by the screen size and sets the max width property at each of the 6 Bootstrap breakpoints. We use the term breakpoint to define a particular viewport width or height at which a responsive design should change significantly. Bootstrap 5 includes 6 default breakpoints. Extra small for extra small size screens where the maximum width of the screen is less than 576 pixels. Small indicated by the class infix_sm for small size screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 576 pixels. Medium indicated by the class infix_md for medium sized screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 768 pixels. Large indicated by the class infix_lg for large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 992 pixels. Extra large indicated by the class infix_xl for extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1200 pixels. And finally, extra large indicated by the class infix_xxl for extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1400 pixels. Inside the div tag, let's add a header tag. The header tag is typically used as a container for the head section of a website. Let's add 7 Bootstrap classes to the header tag: d-flex, flex-wrap, align-items-center, justify-content-center, justify-content-md-between, pt-3, and pb-2. The d-flex class is a Bootstrap class used to create a flexbox container and to transform its direct children into flex items. The flex-wrap class indicates that flex items in a flex container can be wrapped into multiple lines. This means that on smaller screens, the items in the navbar will be stacked vertically and displayed on top of each other. The align-items-center is a Bootstrap class that controls the vertical alignment of a single row of flex items. When we use this class, the items will be aligned in the center of the screen. The justify-content-center is a Bootstrap class that controls the alignment of flex items. When we use this class, the items will be displayed in the center of a flex container on the screen. The justify-content-md-between class indicates that on medium screens, where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 768 pixels, flex items will be aligned in such a way that there will be an equal amount of space between each item. The pt-3 is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the padding on top of the element to 3. The pb-2 class sets the padding at the bottom of the element to 2. Inside the header tag, let's add an anchor tag. The anchor tag is used to create a hyperlink to websites, files, email addresses, locations on the same page, and so on. Let's add 9 Bootstrap classes to the A tag: call-md-3, d-flex, align-items-center, mb-2, mb-md-0, h4, text-white, text-decoration-none, and text-uppercase. Bootstrap's grid system allows up to 12 columns across the page, and the column classes indicate the number of columns we would like to use out of the possible 12 columns per row. The call-md-3 class means that on medium screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 768 pixels, this element will span 3 out of 12 columns. The d-flex class is a Bootstrap class used to create a flexbox container and to transform its direct children into flex items. The align-items-center is a Bootstrap class that controls the vertical alignment of a single row of flex items. When we use this class, the items will be aligned in the center of the screen. The mb-2 is a Bootstrap class that sets the margin bottom to 2 so that we will have a little margin at the bottom of the element. The mb-md-0 class indicates that on medium screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 768 pixels, the margin bottom will be set to 0. The h4 class is a Bootstrap class that sets the font styling of the text inside the element to heading 4. As I've mentioned, HTML headings are defined with the h1 to h6 tags. h1 defines the most important heading and h6 the least important. The text-white class will set the color of the text inside the element to white. The text-decoration-none class removes any existing text decoration of the A tag. By default, in Bootstrap, links are underlined when they are in an active state or when we hover over them. I don't want that here. The text-uppercase is a Bootstrap class that will make the text inside the element uppercase. I will also add the href attribute to the anchor tag and set its value to a / so that once the user clicks on the logo, they will be redirected to the home page. So how our logo should look like? I want to display an icon and text. I will search for the storm icon, copy the span tag, and paste it inside the anchor tag. I will also add a margin of 1 on the right side of the icon. Below the icon, I will add the text Bob's Company. Next, let's focus on the navigation menu. Below the A tag, let's add an unordered list. The list will hold menu items. We will assign 5 Bootstrap classes to this UL tag: nav, call-md-auto, mb-2, justify-content-center, and mb-md-0. Just a quick note here. We've already discussed some of these Bootstrap classes earlier in this tutorial, so I will not repeat that information here. When during coding we encounter a new Bootstrap class that has not yet been seen in this tutorial, I will explain it in detail. The nav is a Bootstrap class built with a flexbox that provides a foundation for building all types of navigation components. It includes style overrides for working with lists, link padding for larger hit areas, and basic disabled styling. The call-md-auto class indicates that on medium screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 768 pixels, the number of columns to span out of 12 will be set to auto. OK, inside the unordered list, we need to add list items. Each list item starts with the li tag. Inside the list item, we will add an anchor tag indicating a hyperlink. To each list item, we need to add the nav-item class, and to each anchor tag, we need to add the nav-link class. I will also add the class of text-secondary, text-uppercase, and px-2 to the anchor tag. The text-secondary class will set the color of the text inside the element to gray. We will later customize this value using Sass so that we can use our own color. The px-2 is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the padding on the x-axis to 2. This means that we set both the padding on the left and the right side of the element to 2. The first menu item I want is Home. I will also add the href attribute to the anchor tag and set its value to a / so that once the user clicks on this menu item, they will be redirected to the home page. I want to have 3 more menu items corresponding to the various sections of the website, so we can copy the list item and paste it below 3 times. The second menu item is About, the third is Products, and the fourth is Contact. For now, I will set the href attribute to the # for all 3 menu items. Next, let's focus on social media icons. Below the unordered list, let's add a div tag with the class of call-md-3 and text-end. This div tag will hold social media icons. The call-md-3 class means that on medium screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 768 pixels, this element will span 3 out of 12 columns. The text-end class indicates that the text inside the element will be end-aligned on all viewport sizes. The end in the left-to-right web design means right, and in the right-to-left design means left. The right-to-left design in a web development context means making your website compatible with languages such as Arabic, Hebrew, Persian, and Urdu, which are all written from right to left. In our case, since we use English, we have a left-to-right website, and the text-end class indicates that the text will be aligned to the right. Inside the div tag, let's add an a tag with the class of ms-3 and text-decoration-none. I will also set the href attribute to the #. The ms-3 class indicates that the margin start is set to 3. Margin start in the left-to-right web design means margin left, and in the right-to-left design means margin right. In our case, since we use English, we have a left-to-right website, and ms-3 indicates the left margin set to 3. Inside the a tag, let's add an icon. To find icons to use on our page, go to https://icons.getbootstrap.com. Here we can search for social media icons that we would like to use on our website. I will search for Twitter, copy the code snippet and paste it inside the a tag. I will also add the class of text-primary. The text-primary class will set the color of the text inside the element to blue. We will later customize this value using Sass so that we can use our own color. I want 2 more social media icons, so I will copy the a tag and paste it below 2 times. The second icon will be Instagram and the third will be Facebook. Now let's add some additional style roles to the styles.scss file. Let's open the underscore variables.scss file. This file contains all the variables used by Bootstrap 5, including variables for global options, colors, layout, typography, forms, components, helpers, and utilities. First, let's customize a few of the Bootstrap default theme color variables. I want to use different colors for primary, secondary, and dark color variables. In the styles.scss file, above the import roles, I will add a few Sass variables. Sass variables can be used to store any CSS value that we want to use. For example, we can use them for colors when we need to implement a consistent color scheme across many components and potentially need to change one or more of the colors later in the process. This can then be done simply by updating the value of the variable. Despite their simplicity, Sass variables are one of the most useful tools of Sass. Variables make it possible to reduce repetition, do complex math, configure libraries, and much more. As I've mentioned, the Bootstrap Sass code is written using the SCSS syntax, and Sass variables are used extensively by Bootstrap. They are used to maintain visual consistency across components when it comes to colors, spacing, and so on. Furthermore, Sass variables are also used in such a way that the user can easily configure them before the CSS generation. To create a Sass variable, we simply assign a value to the name of a variable that begins with the $sign, and then we can refer to that name instead of the value itself. When the Sass file is processed, the live Sass compiler takes the values of the variables and places them in the regular CSS. I will type $primary : and after the colon, a custom color that I want to use. We end the variable declaration with a semicolon. I want my primary color to still be blue, but a different shade than the blue color used in the Bootstrap default styles. Next, I will add a Sass variable to store my custom secondary color. Finally, I will add a Sass variable to store my custom dark color. Our custom Sass variables must be declared above the Bootstrap import. Otherwise, the rest of the Bootstrap code would be unable to utilize the updated values. In the underscore variables.scss file, we can see this default statement right here. This is a Sass feature, which means only apply this value right here if one has not yet been declared. In our case, the primary color has been declared here above the import rule. So when it reaches this line, it will use the value already declared by us, and not this one right here. Let's also add a Sass variable to store the line height property that will be used to align our icons. I will set the value of this variable to 1 pixel. Now let's add a style role for the body tag. This one here is a type selector, also known as an element selector, that selects HTML elements with a given tag name and applies the same styles to each element with that tag name. The type selector begins with a tag name to match. Then we define the CSS properties within the curly braces. Here we have the body tag, but we could also use the type selector to style HTML elements that occur multiple times within a page, like a p tag representing a paragraph, for example. In that case, the same styles would be applied to all paragraphs. I want the body of the page to have a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. I set it that way because I don't want the web browser to apply its default margin and padding around the body. This means that the body of the page will fill the entire screen without any extra space around the page. I will also set the background color to our custom dark variable. As I've mentioned, once we create a Sass variable and assign a value to it, we can then refer to that variable by name instead of the value itself. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Okay, we have a header with a logo, a menu, and social media icons. The background is dark, just like I wanted. However, I would also like to increase the size of the icons in the header and add an HR tag just below the header. The HR tag, also known as the horizontal rule, represents a thematic break between sections or paragraph level elements. First, let's add the HR tag between the navbar and the hero section. I will also add a Bootstrap class of text-secondary. This class will use our custom secondary color defined here in the styles.scss file. Now, let's add style rules to increase the size of the icons in the navbar. First, let's focus on the icon in the logo. It's this one here. We have an A tag, and inside it we have an icon with the class of material-icons-outline. To increase the size of this icon, we can use a nested rule. With Sass, we can nest CSS selectors in a way that reflects the structure of our HTML so that we can achieve the same visual hierarchy. Using carefully nested CSS selectors is a good way to make our code more readable. Rather than repeating the same selectors over and over, we can write one style rule inside another. Sass will automatically combine the selector of the outer rule with the selector of the inner rule. Remember, when you're nesting CSS selectors, having too many levels is generally considered bad practice. I will add an A tag followed by curly braces, and inside I will add the material-icons-outline class followed by curly braces. Inside, I will set the font size to 40 pixels. Next, let's add style rules for all material icons that will appear in our application, not just the one in the logo. What we can see here is a class selector that selects HTML elements containing a class attribute that has been assigned a value matching the selector. The class selector begins with a dot followed by a class name to match. Then, we define the CSS properties within the curly braces. Multiple HTML elements can share the same class, meaning that we can use one class name to style multiple HTML elements in the same way. I will set the vertical align property to middle and the line height property to the value specified in our custom Sass variable line-height, which is 1 pixel. Next, let's increase the size of social media icons in the header. We use here Bootstrap icons, so we can add style rules for the BI class. I will set the font size to 25 pixels. Let's add one more style rule. I want to change the font weight to bold once I hover over a menu item. To do that, we can use a new type of Sass selector known as a parent selector. The parent selector indicated by the ampersand symbol is a special selector invented by Sass that is used in nested selectors to refer to the outer selector. It makes it possible to reuse the outer selector in more complex ways, like adding a pseudo class or a selector before the parent. When a parent selector is used in an inner selector, the ampersand symbol is replaced by the corresponding outer selector. In our case, the outer selector will be the class nav-link. I want to change the font weight once I hover over menu items, so inside the parentheses, I will add the ampersand symbol followed by the colon followed by the word hover. The colon hover is an example of a CSS pseudo class, which is a keyword added to a selector that specifies a special state of the selected element. The CSS pseudo class :hover can be used to select a button or link when a user's pointer hovers over the element, and this selected element can then be styled. I will set the font weight to bold. Now, Let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's go to the browser. Great! We have the navbar with a logo, a navigation menu, and social media icons. The icons have the size I wanted. The font weight changes once I hover over menu items. The navbar is fully responsive, and once we decrease the size of the screen, we can see that the items in the navbar are stacked vertically and displayed on top of each other. Everything is working as expected. Now we can focus on building the hero section of the page. First, let's add a section tag. The section tag represents a generic standalone section of a document which doesn't have a more specific semantic element to represent it. Let's also add the py-5 class, which is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the padding on the y-axis to 5. This means that we set both the padding on the top and the bottom of the header tag to 5. Inside the section tag, let's add a div with the class of container and px-5. The container is a Bootstrap class that provides a fixed width container with a width determined by the screen size and sets the max width property at each of the 6 Bootstrap breakpoints we discussed earlier. The px-5 is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the padding on the x-axis to 5. This means that we set both the padding on the left and the right side of the div to 5. Inside that div, let's add another div and assign 2 Bootstrap classes to it. In Bootstrap, a div with the row class is used mainly to hold columns in it. Bootstrap's grid system allows up to 12 columns across the page, and the column classes indicate the number of columns we would like to use out of the possible 12 columns per row. Let's also add align-items-center. The align-items-center is a Bootstrap class that controls the vertical alignment of a single row of flex items. When we use this class, the items will be aligned in the center of the screen. The hero section will be split into 2 parts. On the left, we will have a short description and 2 buttons, while on the right, we will have an image. Therefore, we need to add 2 div tags, one for the content on the left and the other for the content on the right of the hero section. Okay, so let's add 3 Bootstrap classes to the first div: col-lg-8, col-xl-7, and col-xxl-6. The col-lg-8 class means that on large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 992 pixels, this div will span 8 out of 12 columns. The col-xl-7 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1200 pixels, this div will span 7 out of 12 columns. The col-xxl-6 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1400 pixels, this div will span 6 out of 12 columns. So the number of columns will decrease as the screen size increases. Let's also add 3 Bootstrap classes to the second div: col-xl-5, col-xxl-6, and justify-content-center. The col-xl-5 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1200 pixels, this div will span 5 out of 12 columns. The col-xxl-6 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1400 pixels, this div will span 6 out of 12 columns. So the number of columns will increase as the screen size increases. The justify-content-center is a Bootstrap class that controls the alignment of flex items. When we use this class, the items will be displayed in the center of a flex container on the screen. Inside the first div, we will have the left side of the hero section, a short description, and 2 buttons. Inside the second div, we will have the right side of the hero section, an image. Okay, let's start building the left side of the hero section. First, let's add a div with the class of text-center and my-5. The text-center class will align the text inside the div tag to the center. The my-5 class is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the margin on the y-axis to 5. This means that we set both the margin on the top and the bottom of the div tag to 5. Inside that div, I will add a heading with the class of text-white, fw-bold, and mb-2. Inside the heading, I will add some text. The fw-bold class will set the font weight of the text inside the heading to bold. The mb-2 is a Bootstrap class that sets the margin bottom to 2 so that we will have a little margin at the bottom of the heading. Below, I will add another heading and assign 3 Bootstrap classes to it: text-primary, fw-bold, and mb-2. Inside the heading, I will add some text. The text-primary class will set the color of the text inside the heading to blue. The other 2 are the same classes as in the heading above. Next, let's add a p tag that represents a paragraph. I will also assign 3 Bootstrap classes to this paragraph: lead, text-secondary, and mb-4. Inside that p tag, I will add a short description. The lead is a Bootstrap class that increases the font size and line height of a paragraph so that it stands out from regular paragraphs. Below the description and the hero section, I want to have 2 buttons. So let's add a div tag and 5 Bootstrap classes to it: d-grid, gap-2, d-sm-flex, justify-content-center, and mb-5. The 2 buttons will be placed inside this div. The d-grid is a Bootstrap utility class that makes the div a grid container. The gap-2 class will set the size of the gap between grid columns to 2. The d-flex class is a Bootstrap class used to create a flexbox container and to transform its direct children into flex items. Here we are adding the d-sm-flex class, so we want to apply it only to small and extra small screens where the width of the screen is 576 pixels or less. On small and extra small screens, the 2 buttons inside the div will be displayed vertically on top of each other. The justify-content-center class will set the buttons inside the div to be displayed in the center of that div. Okay, now we can add the 2 buttons. First, let's add a button tag with the type button and assign 8 Bootstrap classes to it: btn, btn-primary, btn-lg, text-white, text-uppercase, px-4, me-sm-3, and rounded-0. The btn is a Bootstrap class that creates a basic button. The btn-primary class is used to create a blue button. We use the btn-lg class when we want a larger button than the default size. We can use the btn bootstrap classes with button, input, and anchor tags. The rounded-0 class will remove rounded corners on all 4 sides of the element. So here, our button will not have rounded corners, it will be a rectangle. By default, buttons in Bootstrap have rounded corners, and if you want to keep it that way, simply don't add the rounded-0 class to your button. Inside the button tag, I will add the text "Learn More" and an icon. I will search for the help outline icon, copy the span tag, and paste it inside the button tag just below the text. I will also add a margin of 2 on the left side of the icon. We will have 2 buttons in the hero section, so I will copy this code snippet, paste it below, and modify it. I will change the btn-primary class to btn-outline-primary so that we will have a button with a dark background, blue border, and blue text. I will change the text to View Demo. Finally, I will also change the icon to Play Circle. OK, we've completed the left side of the hero section. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Great, everything is working as expected. We have the hero section. On the left we have a short description and 2 buttons. Let's quickly change one thing. When I hover over the View Demo button, I want the text to be white to match the button on the left. We can do it using Sass. I will add an ID of demo to the button I want to modify. Now let's add some additional style rules. We will again use the Sass parent selector. This one here is the ID selector that selects an HTML element with a given ID attribute. The ID attribute specifies a unique ID for an HTML element. We can have more than one element with the same ID in an HTML document, so by definition, the style rules defined by the CSS ID selector will always match only one HTML element. I want to change the color of the text on the button once I hover over it, so inside the parentheses, I will add the ampersand symbol followed by the CSS pseudo class :hover. I will set the color to white. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Once I hover over the button on the right, the color of the text changes to white. Everything is working as expected. Now let's focus on building the right side of the hero section. Inside this div here, I will add an image tag and assign 3 Bootstrap classes to it: img-fluid, rounded-2, and my-5. Images in Bootstrap are made responsive with the img-fluid class. This class applies to an image a max width of 100% and the height of auto so that the image scales with the parent element. In our case, the parent element is this div here. The rounded-2 is a Bootstrap utility class that allows us to easily round the corners of an element. The my-5 class sets the margin on the y-axis to 5. This means that we set both the margin on the top and the bottom of the element to 5. The image tag has 2 required attributes: the src attribute, which specifies a path to the image, and the alt attribute, which specifies an alternate text for the image if the image, for some reason, can't be displayed. I will add the src attribute and set the path to the image. If you want to use the same image in your hero section, you can find it in the project's GitHub repository. The repository is linked in the description section below. I will set the alt attribute to hero image. Okay, we have completed the hero section of our website. Below the hero section, let's add the HR tag with the class of text-secondary. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Great! The hero section is split into two parts. On the left, we have a short description and two buttons, while on the right we have an image. Everything is working as expected. Now we can focus on building the product section of the page. The product section will be split into two parts. On the left, we will have a section in which we encourage visitors to subscribe to our services. This section will include a title, a short description, and a button. On the right, we will have 4 products. Each product will include a product name, a description, and an icon. First, let's add a section tag with the class of container, px-4 and py-5. Inside the section tag, let's add a heading and assign 4 Bootstrap classes to it: text-center, text-white, fw-bold, and pb-2. Inside the heading, I will add the text products. As I've mentioned, we've already discussed many of these Bootstrap classes earlier in this tutorial, so I will not repeat that information here. However, when during coding we encounter a new Bootstrap class that has not yet been seen in this tutorial, I will explain it in detail. Below the heading, let's add a div tag with the class of row and align-items-center. The product section will be split into two parts. On the left, we will have a title, a short description, and a button, while on the right, we will have 4 products. Therefore, we need to add 2 div tags, one for the content on the left and the other for the content on the right of the product section. As I've already mentioned, Bootstrap's grid system allows up to 12 columns across the page, and the column classes indicate the number of columns we would like to use out of the possible 12 columns per row. Bootstrap's grid system includes 6 tiers of predefined classes for building complex responsive layouts. We can customize the size of our columns on extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, or extra large devices, however we see fit. Okay, let's add 2 Bootstrap classes to the first div, call-xl-5 and call-xxl-6. The call-xl-5 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1200 pixels, this div will span 5 out of 12 columns. The call-xxl-6 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1400 pixels, this div will span 6 out of 12 columns. So the number of columns will increase as the screen size increases. Let's also add 3 Bootstrap classes to the second div, call-lg-8, call-xl-7, and call-xxl-6. The call-lg-8 class means that on large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 992 pixels, this div will span 8 out of 12 columns. The call-xl-7 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1200 pixels, this div will span 7 out of 12 columns. The call-xxl-6 class means that on extra large screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1400 pixels, this div will span 6 out of 12 columns. So the number of columns will decrease as the screen size increases. Inside the first div, let's add another div tag and assign 5 Bootstrap classes to it: d-flex, flex-column, gap-to, align-items-start, and py-5. The d-flex class is a Bootstrap class used to create a flexbox container and to transform its direct children into flex items. We can set the direction of flex items in a flex container with directional utilities. Here, we use the flex-column class to set a vertical direction, meaning that our main axis will run from the top of the container to the bottom, so the flex items will be displayed vertically on top of each other. The gap-to class will set the size of the gap between flex items to 2. We use align items utilities on flexbox containers to change the alignment of flex items on the main axis. If the flex direction is set to column, like in our case, the flex items are aligned on the x-axis. Inside the div tag, let's add a heading with the class of text-white and fw-bold. Below the heading, I will add a p tag with the class of text-secondary. And finally, below the paragraph, let's add a button tag with the type button and assign 8 Bootstrap classes to it: btn, btn-primary, btn-lg, text-white, text-uppercase, px-4, me-sm-3, and rounded-0. Inside the button tag, I will add the text subscribe and an icon. I will search for the subscriptions icon, copy the span tag, and paste it inside the button tag just below the text. I will also add a margin of 2 on the left side of the icon. Okay, we've completed the left side of the product section. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Great, everything is working as expected. We have the product section. On the left, we have a section in which we encourage visitors to subscribe to our services. This section includes a title, a short description, and a button. Now let's focus on building the right side of the product section. Inside this div here, I will add another div and assign 3 Bootstrap classes to it: row, row-calls-sm-2, and g-4. We use the responsive row-calls classes to quickly set the number of columns that best render our content and layout. Whereas normal call classes apply to the individual columns, the row column classes are set on the parent element with the class of row as a default for contained columns. We use these row column classes to quickly create basic grid layouts or to control our card layouts and override when needed at the column level. The row-calls-sm-2 class indicates that on small screens where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 576 pixels, we will have 2 row columns. The g-4 class means that we set all gutters to 4. Gutters are the padding between the columns that we use to responsibly space and align content in the Bootstrap grid system. Now, let's focus on the first of the 4 products. First, I will add a div tag with the class of d-flex, flex-column, and gap-to. I want each product to include a blue, square avatar with a white icon, a product name, and a description. First, let's focus on creating a blue, square avatar with a white icon. I will add a div tag and assign a number of classes to it. First, let's add a custom class of product-icon. We will set style rules for this custom class in the styles.scss file in a moment. Let's also add 7 Bootstrap classes: d-inline-flex, align-items-center, justify-content-center, bg-primary, text-white, fs-4, and rounded-0. The d-inline-flex class is a Bootstrap class used to create an inline flexbox container and to transform its direct children into flex items. The bg-primary class adds a blue background color to an element. We have customized the primary color using Sass to use our own shade of blue. The fs-4 is a Bootstrap utility class that sets the font size to 4. Inside the div tag, I will add a Bootstrap icon. I will search for the archive icon, copy the I tag, and paste it inside the div tag. Next, let's add style rules for our custom product-icon class. I want to set the width and height of our blue square avatar. To do that, we can use a property declaration. In Sass, as in CSS, property declarations define how elements that match a selector are styled, but Sass adds extra features to make them easier to write and automate. A declaration's value can be any Sass script expression, which will be evaluated and included in the result. I will add the product-icon class selector followed by the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, let's first add a Sass variable called size and set it to 48 pixels. As I've mentioned, Sass variables can be used to store any CSS value that we want to use. To create a Sass variable, we simply assign a value to a name of a variable that begins with the $sign, and then we can refer to that name instead of the value itself. When the Sass file is processed, the live Sass compiler takes the values of the variables and places them in the regular CSS. Next, let's set both the width and height to our custom size variable. Below the div, I will add a heading that will store the name of a product. Let's add 3 Bootstrap classes to the heading: text-white, fw-semibold, and mb-0. The fw-semibold class will set the font weight of the text inside the heading to semi-bold. The mb-0 class will eliminate the margin at the bottom of the element by setting it to 0. Below the heading, I will add a p tag with the class of text-secondary. OK, we have the first of the 4 products. Let's copy this entire code snippet and paste it below 3 times, since we need 3 more products. In the second product, I will change the icon to gear and the product name to product 2. In the third product, I will change the icon to camera and the product name to product 3. In the fourth product, I will change the icon to cart and the product name to product 4. OK, we have now completed the product section of our website. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Great, the product section is split into 2 parts. On the left, we have a title, a short description, and a button, while on the right, we have 4 products. The product section is also fully responsive. Everything is working as expected. Now we can focus on building the call to action section of the page. The call to action navigating towards a particular activity is a crucial element to every landing page. In this section, we will encourage visitors to sign up for a newsletter to get the latest updates about our products. First, let's add a section tag with the class of bg-primary, p-5, p-sm-5, and mt-5. Inside the section tag, let's add a div and assign 5 Bootstrap classes to it: d-flex, flex-xl-row, flex-column, align-items-center, and justify-content-between. The d-flex class is a Bootstrap class used to create a Flexbox container and to transform its direct children into Flex items. We can set the direction of Flex items in a Flex container with directional utilities. The flex-xl-row class indicates that on extra large screens, where the minimum width of the screen is greater than or equal to 1200 pixels, we set a horizontal direction, meaning that our main axis will run along the row in the inline direction. On smaller screens, the flex-column class will be applied to set a vertical direction. This means that our main axis will run from the top of the container to the bottom. So, on smaller screens, the flex items will be displayed vertically on top of each other. The justify-content-between class indicates that flex items will be evenly distributed within the alignment container along the main axis. Here, we will have two flex items, so the first item will be placed on the left side of the container, the second item will be placed on the right side of the container, and we will have some space between the two. Next, let's add a div tag with the class of mb-4 and mb-xl-0. Inside that div, I will add two p tags. To the first p tag, I will assign three Bootstrap classes: text-white, fs-3, and fw-bold. To the second p tag, I will assign the class of text-y-50. The text-y-50 class adds 50% opacity for white text. Okay, we've completed the left side of the call to action section. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Great, everything is working as expected. We have the call to action section. On the left, we have two pieces of text. Now let's focus on building the right side of the call to action section. Inside this div here, I will add another div with the class of ms-xl-4. Inside it, let's add a div with the class of input-group and mb-2. The input-group class is a container to enhance an input by adding an icon, text, or a button in front or behind the input field as a help text. Inside the div with the input-group class, let's add an input tag with the type of email and the class of form-control and rounded-0. The form-control is a Bootstrap class that provides text input elements with custom Bootstrap styles, sizing, focus state, and more. I will also add the placeholder attribute and set it to email address. The placeholder attribute specifies a short hint that describes the expected value of an input field and is displayed in the input field before the user enters a value. Below the input tag, let's add a button tag with the type of button and the class of btn, btn-outline-light, and rounded-0. Inside this button, I will add the text sign up. Below the div with the input-group class, let's add a p tag with the class of small and text-y-50. I will also add some text. Okay, we have now completed the call to action section of our website. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Great, the call to action section is split into two parts. On the left, we have two pieces of text. On the right, we have an input field and a sign up button so that visitors can sign up for a newsletter to get the latest updates about our products. The call to action section is also fully responsive, and once we decrease the size of the screen, we can see that the items in the section are stacked vertically and displayed on top of each other. Everything is working as expected. Now we can focus on building the last part of the page, the footer. First, let's add a footer tag with the class of text-center, text-secondary, and py-4. The footer tag defines a footer of a page, document, or section, and it typically contains information about the author, copyright data, or links to related documents. Inside the footer tag, let's add a div with the class of container, px-5, and mb-2. Inside this div, I will add the copyright information. $copy semicolon is an HTML entity representing the copyright symbol. Now let's check what the page looks like after the changes. The live server is still running, so let's head to the browser. Okay, we now have the footer section. The layout of the page is fully responsive and it automatically adapts when we resize the browser window. We've now completed our landing page and we've learned a lot about HTML, Bootstrap 5 and Sass, and a little bit about pure CSS. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel so you can be notified every time we upload a new video. It really helps with the algorithm to get our videos out there to more and more people so that we can continue making them. We really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.